Namaskaram, everyone. This is Sangeeta Laura Biagi, and I'm delighted to share with you some teachings from the parampara of Yogamaharishi Dr. Swami Gitananda Giri, Guru Maharaj Ki. And these are teachings that are based on the online course, Sacred Sounds of the Chakras, that my Acharya and Guruji, Yogacharya Dr. Ananda Balayogi Bhavanani, and I are sharing during the months of November and December 2022. So this video is to highlight some of the magical teachings of this parampara on the Bija mantras of the chakras. There's something really important about the pronunciation and the awareness of the resonance of the Bija mantras that is often lost, particularly when taught through books or when taught online, where the sound is not clearly pronounced or audible. So we want to make sure that the students in our course and the general public got a sense of what's actually happening. So first of all, we will be looking at our nasal and oral cavities. So anytime we pronounce a mantra in the audible sound of the japa, we are pronouncing this mantra by allowing the resonance of the nasal cavity and the oral cavity to shine, to vibrate. Most of the times, the Bija mantras are pronounced on an exhale. So as we breathe out, we allow the vocal cords to come together. The vocal cords are in this area of our larynx here. Okay, so just behind the voice box. And they are almost parallel to the ground when you're standing or sitting up. So the air comes out of the lungs by the mechanics of the diaphragm. And so through the trachea and then the pharynx, the larynx, it finally gets to the vocal cords where it's articulated in a very sophisticated way. It took humans several thousands of years to come up to a standing position where our vocal cords could be parallel to the floor, and the muscles surrounding the cartilage of the vocal cords could be this sophisticated to articulate such depth of timbre and resonance. So as the air comes up, and when we talk about air in yoga, we always want to remember that it's not just air or oxygen, it's also the energy that moves this air, the prana. So we become aware of the importance of pranayama and the importance of regulating our breath. Most times when we practice mantra, especially practices that are complex, like the Mantra Laya, we rely on awareness and practice of breathing techniques where we can regulate the inhale, the suspension of the breath, the exhale, the suspension on empty lungs. All of this is a prerequisite truly for a healthy mantra japa practice. But just to focus on today's video, which is the pronunciation itself. So as the breath moved by the prana under the control of the mind, as it comes up, it begins to find a natural cavity for resonance, just like a violin or a veena or a guitar. They have the body, the wooden body, or the gourd that create that resonance. For us, the resonance is mostly in the cavity of the mouth and of the nose. Oral also means oral, as in A-U-R, oral, meaning that, as you can see, the udative, the listening, the hearing canal is right here. And so hearing, listening, and articulating go together. So the better we can listen to our own vibration by bone conduction and the sound that we utter, the better our mantra practice will become. So it's not just sending the sound out, but it's also breathing and listening while we chant, invoke, evoke these sounds. So here we see the tongue. The tongue is very important for the proper articulation because it is through the movement of the tongue, as we will see in a few minutes, it is in the movement of the tongue that we are able to articulate different sounds in the guttural. So the tongue is down in the guttural, as in ah, the tongue is totally relaxed, ah. The guttural sounds are the lower resonant sounds. Guttural means the throat, the throat. Gola, gutturale, it's from Latin. Gola is throat. Gutturale means deep in the throat. And of course, I'm clearing here as I speak with you. So, okay. Then, as we travel up, the tongue begins to rise in the palatal sound. Now, palatal or palatal, palatale, is written P-A-T-A-L-E. It's not written palette as the painter's palette, okay? So it's P-A-L-A-T-E, that's palate. The palate is the back of the throat and the upper, see as in here, palatina, tonsilla palatina. So the palate is basically, and then palato, as you can see, palato duro, palato molle. So the palate is this whole area that's the top of the oral cavity. It's the top of the oral cavity, but it's the bottom of the nasal cavity. But for the nasal cavity, we don't talk about palate. We just talk about palate in the mouth. Okay, so we have the back of the palate. If you go back with your tongue, you will find that it's soft. That's why it's called molle. Molle means soft. So the soft palate in the back. And then as you come up a bit with your tongue, you will find a natural bone here, which is the hard palate. It's called hard because it's the bone is there. So it's not as soft as the one in the back. Now, these are all very important points for our tongue to become familiar with. We need to become acquainted with and become aware of the movement of the tongue. The tongue can be flat, it can curl, it can be straight in the teeth, between the teeth. It can go with the point at the root of the teeth. It can stick out. It just is an amazing muscle. And so we will look at that. So the palatal sounds are the ones that are in the back of the oral cavity, just before the hard palate. So for example, a, if you notice what's happening, if you go from a, which is guttural at the bottom, a, and then you go a, you will feel that the mouth comes in the guttural is relaxed, and then it just flattens and it raises in the back a bit. And the muscles of the soft palate stretch to create a different resonance. For example, I, a, this is a, this is a palatal sound. Now we travel up some more and we'll find the cerebral sounds. We will look at the Sanskrit alphabet in a moment because it's a magical language for this, but the palatal sounds, meaning the hard palate, meaning it's a cerebral sound. Cerebrum comes from the brain. So here we are pointing the tip of the tongue at the bottom here of the hard palate. The tip of the tongue is in between the soft and the hard palate. You have to find that spot and stretch your tongue and then learn to relax here. Okay. So these are sounds that in our Latin-based languages we don't have. No, we don't have these sounds. We never bring our tongue up here. So it will take a moment to find your own asana with it, right? It's a tongue. These are tongue asanas, or what I delight in calling mouth reflexology. Because we know from tantric texts of various traditions that there are minor chakras in our mouth. And so by placing the tongue in different positions, we stimulate different minor chakras and minor flows of energy. And we give a massage to our full body by moving the tongue like this. Because, there's reflexology in the tongue. And so the full body is mapped on the tongue. So we're just becoming more aware and creating new neuroplasticity pathways by articulating our tongue this way. It's a miracle, so beautiful. And it's science. So it's poetic and scientific, which is a really wonderful gift of yoga and many authentic spiritual traditions. So onward, then when we travel further, we find the root of the teeth at the top. Often here they have the dental sounds. That. Now, because we put the tip of the tongue here, sometimes what happens with the tongue is that after you find the root of the teeth, then the tongue relaxes a bit. And sometimes you will see the people, for example, that speak Sanskrit and Tamil fluently, that they will stick their tongue out a little bit, which we don't do in the Latin languages or Anglo-Saxon languages that much. Although in English, you do this, that. Okay, but in Italian, we don't do terreno, we don't bring it out. But in Sanskrit, you do ta, ta. So it is the tip of the tongue there, but sometimes it comes out. And then lastly, we have the labiale. Labiale or labial, labra, from labra, lips, ba, pa, just the tip. We have the semi-vowels, we have all of the vowels, the sibilants, sa, sha, sa, which are just here between the teeth. That's why they are sibilant. The tongue is engaged, but it's not blocking the sound. It's like a snake. Did you ever notice that snakes begins with a sibilant? Sarpa, serpe. Okay, so let's go on. So here you will see this drawing that is lovely, although the numbers should have been a little bit further down, but that's okay. So here you have the Sanskrit phonemes. So we call them letters, but they're sounds. They were received by deep meditation by the rishis as shruti. So they were not written down and then pronounced. They were heard and then repeated and then manifested as these glyphs, as these phonemes. Okay, so these are the vowels to begin. In the next slide, we will look at the different types of vowels as well, because the vowels are also guttural, palatal, cerebral, and that's it actually, because then the other ones are blocking the sound. But anyway, so for example, a is the guttural vowel. I, u are palatal sounds. A, I, u. So we're beginning to travel from the guttural up to the palatal sounds. Then we have the cerebral. Now, every time, for those of us mostly who don't speak, Sanskrit or never seen it, when you see a dot underneath, which you can see barely here, but you can see here, for example, right, in the da and the da, these are cerebral sounds. That's the transliteration, the diacritic mark. So, how do you do this? Like the tip of the tongue is curled back, and then you imagine a ra. Now, for the Anglo-Saxons or the Anglophones, this is a challenge, okay? But do your best and leave the rest, okay? Now, in the Mantra Laya, we also have a long l, e, I, o, ow. These are the vowels. Then we begin with the guttural consonants. Now, one thing that you notice that you want to practice is this H, because the Anuswara and the H, I'm going to come back to these in a moment, but the H is H, H. So you need to practice this sound first, because the compound then with the consonant will be Ka, Ka, but then it will be fast. So you have to practice it. Ka, Ka. Okay, so we have we have gutturals. Ka, Ka, Ga, Ga. Now this is an N, but it's a guttural N. You may have never done it before. So imagine an N in your throat. Nga, nga, nga. The chords come together. Nga. But you're imagining an N. Give it a try. Palatal, we come up. Cha, cha. You can hear it's higher. Cha, cha. Ja, ja. Nya, nya. It's a palatal N. Cerebrals, tip of the tongue between the hard and the soft palate. Imagine a T. Ka, ka. Then imagine a D. Ga, ga. And then imagine an N. Na. This is the N of Ganapati, by the way. Okay. Then we go into the dentals. We move forward. Ta, ta. Da, da. Na. Then the labiali, the labials. Pa, pa. Ba, ba. Ma. Then we have the semi-vowels. Half vowel, half consonant. Ya, ra, la, va. The sibilants. Now, the first one is a palatal sibilant. The tongue is flat. Sha. The second one is a cerebral sibilant. You see there's a dot? So you need to imagine almost like you had an egg. You want the top of the oral cavity to resound. Sha. Now this one is Shivam. This is the sh of Shivam. This is the sha of Shanti. Very different sounds. And then the sibilant, the dental, Sa. And then the aspirate, Ha. Okay. Then we also have Ksha, which isn't here, but it's important in the Mantra Laya. Now, we'll come to the Mantra Laya in a moment. So let's go on. Now, when thinking about the Bija mantras of the chakras, Lang, Wang, Rang, Yang, Hung, Ang, Om. Okay, why are these the sounds? Why are these the sounds of the Bija mantras, of the chakras? Have you ever thought about this question? I hadn't for a while. I just listened to my beloved Dr. Ananda and just followed his instruction. That was plenty already. I wasn't going to ask. But then it dawned on me. I was like, why? Why these? And then by studying these semi-vowels, I got a bit of clarity. When you look at these, Wang, so you have Lang, Wang, Rang, Yang. Then we have Hung. Hung is an aspirant. Hung, hung, called here sibilant as well. Hung, hung, hung. Ang is the first of the vowels. And then Om is the pranava Om for Sahasrara. So there's a movement when we pronounce the Dhara Bijas of the mantras that goes from Lang. Now, Lang is in this chart, because this is the chart of the Sanskrit alphabet. This is not a tantric sadhana. Okay, so we'll talk in a moment about the difference between the two. But in this Sanskrit alphabet, the La is considered higher than the Va, but not in the Mantra Laya. In the Mantra Laya, Lang is the Muladhara chakra, and it's the first sound in with the lips open. Lang. Vang begins to bring the sound in. Lang, Vang. It brings it in because Vang, they're half closed. Then we have Rang, the cerebral, Yang, palatal, Hung, guttural, and then the Ang is the first vowel. So we'll see it in a moment, but these are the Bija mantras, the Dhara Bija mantras. So as we practice them, lang, wang, rang, yang, hang, ang, om, we go from the external and we journey into the internal. So there's a journey of acoustics that matches the journey of discernment and contemplation from the prakriti of material world to the pratyahara of oneness with the pranava om. So from the manifestation of muladhara to the subtlety of sahasrara. So now some of the teachings are reserved for the sadhakas who study with a guru and cannot be shared on YouTube this way. So for example, how this is actually pronounced, we invite you to contact us to learn these techniques. They're not shared publicly like this, but just know that the sound of la, which is this one, lang, is a cerebral sound. It's not lam. It's lang, cerebral sound. And this is the Dhara Bija mantra of the chakra. Next, we have the Dhala Bijas, which I'm just going to pronounce for the students who have been following our teachings so that you have something to practice on. So this is Wang. Remember that Va in Sanskrit is between V and W. So it's a Wang. Wang. Shang, palato, flat. Shang. 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 Sang. Continuing on into the Swadhisthana, the Dhara Bija mantra is Wang. The Dhala Bija mantras are Bang, Bhang, Mang, Yang, Rang, Lang. In the Manipura chakra, we have Rang as the Dhara Bija. The Dhala Bija mantras are Dung, cerebral, Dhang, Nang, cerebral, dental, tongue, tongue, dung, dahang, nang, all dental, and then the labial, pang, pang. Anahata chakra, Dhara Bija mantra, yang. The Dhala Bija mantras, guttural, kang, kang, gang, ngang, guttural. Palatal, chang, chahang, jang, jahang, nyang. Cerebral, tang, tahang. One word. Vishuddha chakra, the Dhara Bija mantra, hang, a guttural aspirant. The Dhala Bija mantra are all of the vowels. Ang, ang, ing, ring, 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 eng, ang, ong, aung, ang, ahang. And then lastly, Agnya chakra, it's ang, and the Dhalas, Bija mantra are hang, shang. Okay, so I hope that this brings a little bit of clarity, and there's so much here, and of course only that much can be shared and disclosed, but at least this may give you a sense of the proper pronunciation by a sadhaki who's actually Italian. So my pronunciation is the best I can do. Of course, filtered through my own accent, but at least, there's hope for us. There's hope for us who were not born into these amazing languages of Sanatana Dharma in India. There's hope. But most of all, it's not just hope, it's the desire to feel the amazing vibration of these mantras, and not just use them as part of our practice because these are the mantras and I'm a tantric and I'm going to use the mantra. It's not the attitude. The attitude is that you have to be so flexible with your mind and with your tongue and with your muscles that you're able to attune to the sounds and not use them and pronounce them in a, lazy way because they serve you. That's not the way that these are going to be useful in our sadhana, let alone useful, but definitely like inspiring. Okay, so I hope this gives you an encouragement to find an authentic tradition where you can learn. I'm gonna put in the descriptions below my website and also the website of our parampara, ICYER in India at Ananda Ashram, so you can check both and contact us for any information about these teachings. And last but not least, all of these amazing letters of the Sanskrit alphabet, when they are pronounced with the Anuswara, with the Chandra Bindu, become the sadhana of Mantra Laya. And so there's so much there that we can explore. When we find ourselves blocked by indecision or embarrassment, or we don't hear a sound, or we can't feel it, we can't understand it, no worries. Those are all our obstacles and limitations that these sounds bring to our awareness. They are not actual obstacles. These are like some gross residue that we need to slowly transform and make more subtle. But it's not a blockage. Oh, I can't do this, or I can't hear this. Don't give up right away, okay? In fact, take this as an amazing opportunity to refine yourself, refine your senses, and learn and grow in your sadhana. So, a deep thank you to my Acharya Dr. Ananda Balayogi Bhavanani, our Guruji, and the Guruji of our parampara, Yogamaharishi Dr. Swami Gitananda Giri, Guru Maharaj ki, and our beloved Pudvai Shakti Yogacharini Ammaji Meenakshi Devi Bhavanani, our teacher of Sanskrit, Yogacharini Devasena Bhavanani, the full amazing Bhavanani family, and all of the Gitananda family worldwide. Hari Om Tat Sat.